Benedict Spence is here. Benedict, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm all right, but becoming more and more kind of restless about the terrible state of this government, the terrible state of this country. I mean, that kind of sums it up. You know, we've got this massive junior doctor strike going on, 5 days of carnage, chaos, 250,000 appointments being smashed to death, and nobody is going to be able to see a doctor. People are going to die, and they can't even be bothered to run a proper picket line.
Yeah, it's a proper sort of millennial strike, actually, isn't it? Nobody can actually be bothered to get out of bed.
Yeah.
It's not so much that people are organised or anything like that. They haven't got the excess energy to dispense on protesting or anything like that. They're just watching Netflix. If they can afford Netflix, because, you know, times are tough, as we all know. I mean, honestly, the trouble with this is, you know, we could lambast the doctors all day and it would be fun. But the problem is this isn't going away. And this is partly the fault of successive governments. I mean, to be fair, they were underpaid for a long time. They have had a huge, massive pay rise subsequently, which most other people haven't had. The problem is, being a doctor is a very highly rated, a highly prized profession, and not just in the UK, but all around the world. What a lot of these doctors do is that they see their colleagues moving to places like Canada and Australia, where they do get significantly higher pay than they do here, and you can't hide that from them, is the fact. And there's no way of saying to people, well, the entirety of this country is suffering, and therefore you should perhaps just put up a little bit with, what was it, your 29% pay rise? Maybe you should just lump it for a little bit, whilst the rest of us all do as well. There's no telling these people, because they will say, but I could move anywhere in the world to do this sort of thing. And, you know, this is a problem of the government's making, ultimately, as irritating as it is that doctors are behaving this way.
Yeah, true. But I mean, the thing is, the public, as of now, have completely lost faith in the government and have completely lost faith in the doctors. You know, last time they went on strike, which went on for quite a long time, it went on for pretty much nearly a year, from sort of the summer of 23 all the way through to the July of 24. And, you know, you could tell that they just wanted to get rid of the Tory government, and they were trying to bring them down, and they managed to do that by hook or by crook. But then, you know, the government and the public actually had some sympathy with them, and they thought, all right, you know, maybe you do need some better conditions, maybe you do need some more money. But now, every single poll that you see says that the public does not support this strike, and the public will not even take into account that they're somehow hard done by. And what the government have said now is that they're going to continue to run the A&E operation that they run. They're going to continue to hopefully keep up as many appointments as they can, and they're just going to try and defy these doctors. But somehow it's got to end at some point, isn't it?
It does, but it's ironic, really, because it's the NHS itself, in many ways, this great monolith, and the support for it over the years that has perhaps meant that doctors' pay is a lot less competitive than it might otherwise be. If you have this sort of giant edifice that's very difficult to work with, and everybody sort of gets the same as part of it. And as everybody knows, for a very long time, the public, or the perception was that the public blindly supported the NHS in whatever incarnation it was in, and wouldn't countenance any kind of reform to it. And a lot of doctors did as well. They were very pro not reforming the NHS, not privatising it. And now we see the sort of the fruits of that endeavour, which is doctors being massively underpaid as a result. So there is an irony to this, which is that as public sympathy begins to dissipate, also, I think public sympathy towards the NHS in general is beginning to change, and attitudes around things like reforming it, I think, are probably becoming a lot more common than they once were. You're not going to get people stood on doorsteps banging pots and pans for it this time around. I think people are thoroughly fed up.
No, you're absolutely right. And people, because people are struggling in their own right. You know, they're watching, and this has been a big week for this, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, for the next week or two to come. This has been a massive week, hasn't it, for the sort of a migrant conversation, where people are beginning to realise how ridiculous it is, how much free stuff that these people get. You know, yesterday we had the story that the Daily Mail broke, that there's thousands and thousands of people going to betting shops using these cards that they're given. They get given £50 a week expenditure cards, and they're just living high and hog, and people are going, hang on a minute, you know, I can't afford to go betting, I can't afford to go to casinos, I can't afford to take my family on holiday this year because we haven't really got enough money, taxes are going up. I mean, you know, I'm going to be, as many people are, at the end of this month, paying a bucket load of money to the HMRC revenue department of this country because apparently I need to be taxed and I need to, you know, supply money. And I just feel really, for some reason, unlike any other year, I mean, nobody likes paying taxes, but this year particularly, I'm thinking, what am I doing? Why am I paying tax so that they can give this free money to bloody migrants?
I think your attitude is shared by millions of people in this country now. I mean, you know, people never, as you say, people never like paying tax at the best of times, but they can see the government effectively taking their money and setting fire to it. And, you know, when you add it to all the other things that the government is doing and the sheer amount of interest now that we're paying on our national debt, which again is being paid for by our taxes because we are borrowing so much money in order to pay for things like repatriating people from Afghanistan on secret military flights for them to get accommodation and to then just do things like this. It is infuriating, absolutely infuriating. And I mean, the thing about the betting shops, you know, honestly, the idea that you would take money that has been provided for you by the public for you to be able to live on, and we're always told, aren't we, how little money actually there is for these people, and that they don't get supported, and that if anything, they possibly need more money. And then you find that this is how it's being used, and no doubt then, having done that, they will turn around and complain, well, we're not given enough money at all. And then, of course, we've got the story about the shoplifting that's come out today on the front of the Sun.
Yeah.
And you just think, honestly, like the whole point of we thought when you go to someone else's country, be it to live because you're going to work there or because you're a refugee, is that you are grateful and you adhere to the cultural norms of that country. Please, when is that going to start happening? When are we going to see the gratitude from these people? When are we going to see the people who we're told want to be British, love this country for all that it offers? We see that exactly.
Yeah, I know, because it appears that they're all just coming here to take the mickey out of us. It really is quite depressing. But I'll tell you what, I've got, because it's Friday and we're trying to try and cheer people up, I've got a little bit of footage to show you, Benedict, which I'm sure is going to warm the cockles of your heart, if nothing else. This is American Eagle and their latest advert. You know, we've been suffering under the yoke of woke for so long. This is Sydney Sweeney. Acting like a sort of woman from the 1970s, wearing a relatively low-cut top, wearing some fairly tight jeans, getting into a American muscle car, I think it's a Ford Mustang, and driving it off at high speed, screeching the brakes, screeching the tyres, and generally just being a woman. I think it's brilliant.
I mean, it's taken us how many years and how many millions and billions of dollars from advertising companies
About
that have done the whole
years.
thing of having one. Yeah, we've had the whole sort of woke thing of going, well, let's try having, I don't know, one-legged people, let's try having overweight people, let's try having trans people with nose rings and no hair and all that sort of thing. And let's try and look at how diverse it is. And then finally a company's gone, guys, do you know what works? Just putting a really, really gorgeous actress in some tight-fitting clothes and the name of your product. It actually works really well. Maybe we should try that. I think we might actually, I don't want to say this is the watershed moment or anything like this, but I have seen a lot of very positive reactions to this advert.
Yeah.
I think maybe this is the beginnings of the post-woke moment where actually people remember it's nice to have things that are aesthetically pleasing, that don't bully you, that don't try and gaslight you into thinking you should like things that are appalling. This is a really straightforward advert and everybody loves it.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's a return to just normality. You know, we've lived, and I think we're all to blame in a way because we've all sort of allowed it to happen. You know, and you and I have spoken about it for years, but we've sort of never said, no, don't do that, enough of that rubbish, you know, but now people are beginning to say that, and you're starting to see, you know, the likes of banks now going, you know what, we're going to get rid of our diversity coordinator, we're going to get rid of all of these ridiculous rules that we've been putting ourselves under so that we have to sort of live in fairness with everybody, and we're just going to actually run the business like a business and try and make money. And that's really where we are now, and I think it's the one thing that kind of gives me hope for the future, that we're kind of moving out of this woke period, despite the fact that the government is useless, despite the fact that, you know, we haven't got any money, despite the fact that, you know, Keir Starmer keeps trying to gaslight us. You know, if we can get the sort of the business of business back to doing what it does best, perhaps we've got some hope.
I think it reached this moment having, I think it's a sign of actually how tolerant a society we are, how good a society we are, that we actually allowed it to get to this point. Whenever people try and turn around and say, white culture, Western culture is racist and it's sexist and this, that, and the other, remember how far we let them get before we said, do you know what, we've had enough. And ultimately, it's the sort of the juxtaposition of two things, I think. In the United States, not just here, it was the final backlash and pushback against mass migration and illegal migration that actually made people go, do you know what, we've had enough, this is just ridiculous. And on the other side, I think it was finally the straw that broke the camel's back was the trans movement and the idea that men can be women with all their sort of tackle and everything out, and that they should be allowed to go into women's changing rooms and undress in front of small children, all that sort of thing. It was that moment that we all said, you know what, we've had enough of this, and we're going to start rolling all of this back. And I think you're right. I think over the next couple of years, we're going to see a return to these sorts of adverts, this sort of culture, and ultimately being able to speak a little bit more freely without being told you're a bigot at the end of.
Yeah, absolutely right. Because the alternative method has just failed completely. Benedict, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Benedict Spence there, political commentator there, talking about how the return of sexy is actually going to be a good thing, not just for the country, but for the world.